Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Jesus took Peter, John, and James and went up the mountain to pray. While he was praying, his face changed in appearance, and his clothing became dazzling white. And behold, two men were conversing with him, Moses and Elijah, who appeared in glory and spoke of his exodus that he was going to accomplish in Jerusalem. Peter and his companions had been overcome by sleep, but becoming fully awake, they saw his glory and the two men standing with him. As they were about to part from him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good that we are here. Let us make 3 tents, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." But he did not know what he was saying. While he was still speaking, a cloud came and cast a shadow over them, and they became frightened when they entered the cloud. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my chosen Son. Listen to him." After the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone. They fell silent and did not at that time tell anyone what they had seen. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Earlier this week, I was struggling with how to reflect upon the transfiguration of Jesus, the glory of God, at this time when the world seems so crazy, when the war in Ukraine is such a darkness and nightmare. Then on Tuesday night, before heading off to bed, I watched the BBC News for a few minutes. I find myself tearing up pretty easily anytime I'm watching the news these days. I did so on Tuesday night when a young Ukrainian woman was interviewed. She said, "I am a Christian." I don't remember her exact words after that simple declaration of faith, but the gist of it was that even in this darkest hour, she knew that God loved her and the Ukrainian people, and that God would see them through this nightmare. Some of us have been blessed by so-called mountaintop experiences where God's love was so intensely felt that you would think you could face any cross with the trust that God would help you to carry it. But many of us haven't been blessed by such intense experiences of faith. Yet I think all of us who are men and women who pray should be able to recognize God's grace in our everyday lives. A vibrant prayer life is the key to being aware of God's glory. And that's what the Transfiguration really is about, to be able to see God's glory and God's grace in our lives. I see God's glory in the love of my family and how we have worked to stay connected during these past 2 years of pandemic. I see God's glory and grace in the humility of someone who is trying to make a very sincere confession. I see God's glory in the thoughtfulness of a kind act by a friend. And in simply enjoying the beauty of God's creation, most days when the wind isn't blowing like all get out, here on Tybee. And quite often, I see God's glory and grace in you, in your laughter, in your wisdom, your compassion, your kindness, in your sincere efforts to live a life of faith. You all did pretty good springing ahead this morning and getting here on time. That's a good thing. We don't speak of these experiences often enough. Yet I know you also have felt God's presence in these small ways. Perhaps it was something that you saw or read, or maybe it was while you were enjoying the beauty of creation, or spending a few minutes in prayer, and you heard God speak to your heart, speak a word of wisdom or a word of love, or giving you that sense that He is with you and will see you through the challenges of life. For each and every one of us, there can always be another encounter with God that has the potential of transfiguring our lives, of bringing us closer to the person that God created us to be, deeper into the mystery of God's presence with us. On this second Sunday of Lent, I would once again encourage you to keep your hearts open to those experiences. At the end of the day, try to recount them and be grateful for all the little graces that God has bestowed upon you. For the more encounters with God that we let slip by, the harder it becomes to recognize them. So each and every day we need to give thanks to the Lord for touching us with His love and His grace. Today's gospel calls us to listen to Jesus. And Jesus had a wonderful way of pointing out God's presence to His disciples. He opened their hearts and their eyes to God's glory. Once He said, "See this child. You must become like children in order to enter God's kingdom." Or see this mustard seed. Even if you had faith as small as this seed, you could move mountains. See that lamp? Don't hide it. Let your light shine before all. See these little sparrows. God cares for them. How much more must He care for you? See this cup and this bread. This is my body. This is my blood. With the eyes of faith through this Eucharist, may you always see my love, my presence with you. And with Peter we say, "O Master, how good it is to be here. Amen.